Welcome back, everyone, to OpenLine. We are talking about the State of Metro address that was given earlier today by Mayor John Cooper. A remarkable speech. He says we will need a sharp increase in property taxes. He laid out the reasons why. Certainly, the city has been through a lot with the tornado, the coronavirus. The economic impact from both of those has been enormous. We'll just start taking calls. We have, of course, Pat Nolan, who's been kind of helping us get through all this. But let's start taking calls. Let's go to Lucy on line 1. Hello, Lucy.
Hey, y'all.
Hi.
Well, here we are. I said I wasn't going to make a comment because I'm trying to tap down my temper a little bit. But, you know, I've been watching this build for, I think, over 10 years. And when the state auditors came in, you know, I called in the night that y'all had the auditors on there and asked them. I didn't mean to insult anybody, but my question was, where have y'all been? Because it was obvious that we were heading this way, and I've often said we're one tornado away from falling in a crack somewhere that we won't be able to get out of, at least for a while. Well, Mr. Nolan, I'm glad you brought up Nashville's occupation, because we learned back then about fiscal responsibility, and we learned about Southern thrift, about our ethics about saving money and putting back money, all these things that made Tennessee, but being Nashville. And we've lost our way. And we learned culturally that it's that easy to lose it back then. And that's what I always heard about the Civil War. We were a unique city. We were occupied twice by both sides, and we were tortured twice by both sides. So that's what gave Nashville, in my opinion, our culture. Now here we are. So, you know, what can you say? I've got two questions. Mr. Nolan or Mr. Hall, either one y'all can answer this. I heard the mayor say, I didn't catch his speech today, but I heard the mayor say, I think it was last week, that they found, I wish y'all could tell me what this is, phantom cash, and I think phantom revenue or phantom income. I'm going to hang up and see if y'all can tell me what he meant by that and explain that. Thank you for listening.
All right. Do you know about that, Pat?
I don't know what that was referring to. I know Phil Williams did an interview with him. Perhaps it came into that, but I don't know where that came from. I know that the mayor has often been critical, as I mentioned before, that Nashville's been using a lot of one-time money, meaning this is money that you'd be like spending out of your savings account. It doesn't recur unless you put the money back in there again. It's not like you're going to get your paycheck every week or every month. So therefore, that's a recurring income. If you take money out of your savings account and spend it, it's gone. It doesn't suddenly replenish itself within your bank account. That's been a problem. That could create some, quote, phantom money, unquote, if you're looking at it in the sense that it doesn't come back.
And he talked about, at the very beginning of the speech, he spent part of the time talking about the rainy day fund and how we had spent it down, and now it is raining and we don't have money really in that fund to fall back on.
Well, we've never had one that actually was designated as a rainy day fund, and what we had was a reserve fund, and we've always tried to keep that above a certain level, and unfortunately we've gone into that the last couple of years. And then there was a whole separate issue, although not completely unrelated, with the water rates not being where they needed to be in order to keep that solvent, and it was bleeding money as well. So I mean, there's been the caller is got a good point. I mean, we've been living on the edge and over the edge. I don't know that we'd be in the same situation had it just been the tornado, even had it just been the coronavirus. Again, we don't know how much the feds are going to give in to help those things, but the two of them together, plus the uncertainty at this point of exactly how much money the feds are going to get to us, that may make some difference, but it's put us in a position we've never been in before.
And one more question before we go to another call. If we had a reserve fund that was at appropriate levels, whatever that is, and I ask you, what is the appropriate level for a reserve fund? How much would that offset the kind of disruption that he is talking about? Again, $200 to $300 million in lost sales tax revenue.
Well, in the state situation, if God forbid that happened to them on a statewide level, but they probably have enough money in the rainy day fund to take care of that. They already took several $100 million just to balance this upcoming budget that the legislature approved. The question is, they're going to have to dip more into that when they come back in June.
So in the state, they could do it. We obviously...
I think they can handle it a whole lot better. We just weren't prepared for anything like that, and nobody ever thought that was going to happen. That's not a good way to plan, but maybe we'll do better planning in the future. I suspect we will.
Well, let's go to Bill. Hello, Bill.
Yeah, hello?
Go right ahead. What's on your mind?
Yeah, this is Bill. I'm 90 years old, and I guess I lived a little, and I find that this GMC thing to make those machines that President Trump said, is he trying to make a deal with those people with money? I can't understand why he can't get it done for one reason. It's because when the war broke out, the Second World War, in days, factories opened up in the United States like crazy. People joined the Army, Navy. America came together. We jumped up and said, hey, let's go get them. And my point is, why can't we do that again? The garment center in the Second World War made gloves and scarves for the soldiers. You know, we just jumped in and we did it.
Right,
and
right.
I just can't. What the heck is that holding that up? What is?
All right.
Why
Well, Bill.
isn't it being done?
Okay. Now, of course, we're talking about Metro, the state of Metro. What Bill's talking about is getting GM and other Ford, I guess, making ventilators. Pat, you write about all kinds of stuff in your politics-wise. Do you have a quick comment?
The marshaling of America's production capacity was certainly one of the marvels of the Second World War. I mean, we got caught about as unaware when the Japanese bombed us at Pearl Harbor as we've gotten caught unaware by what's happened with this virus. Remember, right now, if this was the beginning of the Second World War again, just on December 7th, we're still barely into January or February of 1942, and we still had some time to gear up. Now, you overlook some of that maybe when you look at how long it took to do that, but there's no question that we not only won the Second World War because we outfought the Japanese and the Germans, we outfought them because we won it because we outmass produced them. We outmass produced them in tanks, in guns, in aircraft carriers, but we weren't always that far ahead. In fact, in the Battle of Midway, we were down to maybe 1.5 aircrafts in the entire Pacific. We managed to win that battle, and after that we had by the time we got to Tokyo Bay to take the surrender of Japan, we had more aircraft carriers than anybody had ever seen in the history of the world, had the biggest fleets ever. We had outproduced the Japanese, which the Japanese thought from the beginning they had a problem with, which is why they wanted to have a quick war. They didn't get it. We can do it. Now, it's interesting, the bill or the law that President Trump keeps getting pushed about, he says, for a while said this was nationalizing industries, actually came not from the Second World War, it came from the Korean War. And I think some people feel like he's not done enough to do that. And I think they're also concerned that the federal government is out competing with all 50 states, with cities, and with healthcare systems to try to find these PPE equipment things, ventilators and things like that. They're all out there competing for it, and therefore everybody's out competing for price, and so people are getting outbid. They can't get it. The equipment is not getting to where it needs to be gone. And that's where the federal government needs to do more than being a shipping clerk. It needs to be an organizer for that, and a lot of people think they're not doing that.
We're also on Facebook, back to talking about the state of Metro and Metro government. The speech today, Skip and Jen Spencer say praying for small business owners. And you do get the sense that they're in great peril right now with what's going on with the economy. We're seeing help from the federal government. Pat, what are you hearing here in Metro? They've set up a committee to help.
They did. I believe that's being chaired by Vice Mayor Shulman, and I believe also Steve Glover and some others in the council involved, and some other small business people. I think it was interesting to note today, this is on the tornado. The mayor again made some references today to make sure that people understood that he is not forgetting about what happened in the tornado. There was a news release that came out of his office this afternoon where their Small Business Administration has approved a number of loans. I think these are related to the tornado. There's going to be a lot of direct help to small businesses as I understand it now. Obviously the details are going to be maybe where the devil's in the details about that, but there are going to be efforts to try to do that directly to them. I think some of the caveats may be keeping your employees on and keeping them at the same wage. If you do that for a certain amount of time, whatever money that you get approved in the loan, you don't have to pay it back. But yeah, it's going to be difficult for them, and it'll be difficult for them to have to handle additional property taxes if that's indeed what the council decides to do, and I suspect there's going to be some level of increase on that.
Do you think there will be pushback from council members. Obviously, the last 2 years, the council has tried to push a property tax increase, has tried to pass a property tax increase. It has come close, but it has not passed. Now we are in unprecedented times, as has been said many times. Do you think there will be pushback, or is this a slam dunk?
Well, I don't think it's a slam dunk. Anytime you raise taxes, it's almost, I've never known one that went through the council for it and nothing. So I think there'll be pushback on this. I think the amount of that may well depend on how large a tax increase it is and also kind of where it's going. The council was, you're right about one thing. The council is perhaps a little bit more predisposed to do a tax increase than we've seen the mayor. Remember, this city has never approved a tax increase under Metro that the mayor didn't ask for or support. The last 2 years, the mayors, whether it's Mayor Briley or now Mayor Cooper, they have been basically opposed to a tax increase, at least appeared they were going to be, and therefore the council last year fell just 1 vote short of putting in a tax increase, and the year before it fell a few votes, even a few more votes than that short. But I think the council is moving in that direction, but again, the size of this does have some impact on that. So we'll see what it winds up being and see what kind of pushback you're going to get. But based on what I'm seeing on the Facebook feed, a lot of people are unhappy about it, and that's understandable. Nobody wants to pay more taxes. I mean, part of the question may well be what's the other side of that? If we don't raise taxes to some level, what services are we willing to cut back on if we're going to live within our means, as people say? Then what does that also mean in terms of city employees, what furloughs or layoffs might be involved there? And I don't say those as threats. I don't say that because I'm supporting a tax increase. I'm just saying those are always the trade-offs you have when you look at those sorts of things.
Especially when we're in kind of time that we're in. It seems to me like the big debate would be just how big will this be? And of course, Mayor Cooper was not able or willing to say what he's going to propose. He says he needs more information. He'll make that. But he said sharp, substantial.
He did. And one other thing to think about, and I don't know if this is going to happen or not, but this also goes back to what happened in 1980. Mayor Cooper, during his campaign, talked quite a bit about the possibility of looking at a sales tax increase. Nashville is about a half-cent shy of maxing out its local option sales tax. Now that takes both a 2/3 vote in the council and approval in a referendum. But he talked about that. And of course, this is long before anybody thought about what's happening right now. So that's a possibility as a way of not taking a property tax increase way up here and moving it a little lower down here. That happened once before, again in 1980, when the council approved the property tax increase. It did. It also put on the ballot in August, right after that, a sales tax increase, I think of a half cent, and said to the voters, if you approve this, we'll take the property tax increase down by a proportionate amount. The voters did that, and that's what happened with the sales tax. And there has not been a sales tax increase in Davidson County in 40 years, and that happened in 1980.
Now, of course, because the state has no property tax, we as a state have a pretty healthy sales tax. So to add on top of that would certainly get a lot of debate as well.
Yeah, well, and we're allowed to do this under state law, so it would take it up here locally, but that's because our local option tax is lower than what the state allows as a maximum.
Well, let's go to Joe on line 3. Hello, Joe.
Hello.
Go right ahead.
Okay, so I have a couple things to say about the taxes that I guess eventually are going to come into effect as far as property owners. My concern is property owners, in all honesty, probably contribute to nonprofit organizations at about a 60% level in Nashville. I mean, we all donate money to nonprofits. We try to take care of the community. We try to do the things we can, and now you're going to up our taxes. What that's going to do, if the mayor decides to do that, and if the council decides to do that, then there's no reason for me to contribute to local, nonprofit organizations. You're just taking the money away from me. And I would suggest that they do it to these businesses, like the local hotels and the corporations. I would suggest that they raise taxes on them, on hotels and businesses, instead of busting us up. I mean, we're just, trying to live our lives, and we're homeowners, and when you beat us up, that lessens our ability to help the people that live in our communities. And
Okay.
I'd like to hear your suggestions on that.
All right, thank you, Joe.
Well, to go back to the time that I was a reporter here from 1975 to 1985, there were a lot of opportunities and a lot of efforts to try to find a way to come up with some kind of fee or something that groups that have tax-exempt properties, and most of those that are owned by nonprofit corporations, they own the property. The property, churches are like this. Their property is tax-exempt. They don't pay property taxes. But people say, well, they still get their garbage picked up. They still get police protection, fire protection. They never were able to figure out a way to get that done. I'm not completely sure how legal that is under state law. That would have to be researched and might require the need for the state to take some actions. That's been talked about before. It never went anywhere. As for the other things, I mean, the hotels pay a lot of taxes. The people that stay there pay a pretty substantial room tax, and that's one of the things that has made a big difference in Nashville. The room taxes here have been going up substantially for the last couple of years. Had a lot of hotels built, and I don't know what state law would allow to have only a commercial property tax increase and not a residential, because when you set the rate is pretty much the same. It's a question of how much you from there take your property value. Because for property values, residential property is only assessed at 25% of that value, and then by the rate. On commercial properties, it's assessed at 40% of the value. So commercial properties are already higher in taxes just in terms of that than they are before. That probably doesn't make the person who called any happier, but that's kind of what I think some of the issues would have to be sorted through to see if any of the things he's talking about could be done.
All right, Joe, thanks for the call. We're going to take a break. Several people on the line, so hold on the line. We'll get to your call. We'll take a break. Be back right after this.